The war had been going on for 3 years. Every day brought new battles, new destruction, and new death across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire and the Korthak Alliance hated each other with a passion that burned hotter than dying stars. Their fleets met in space again and again, turning entire star systems into graveyards. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, watching the enemy fleet approach through the darkness of space. His ship was 5 miles long and packed, with weapons that could crack planets in half. Around him, 2,000 other Zephyrian vessels waited in perfect formation. Each ship was a work of art and science combined, with hulls that could heal themselves and weapons that bent the laws of physics. On the other side of the battlefield, Supreme Commander Thanelock prepared his own forces. The Korthak ships looked different from the Zephyrian vessels. Where the Empire used flowing, organic designs, the Alliance preferred sharp angles and brutal efficiency. Their ships could phase in and out of normal space, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Their weapons fired bolts of pure energy that could erase matter from existence. Both commanders knew this battle would decide everything. 3 years of war had brought them to this moment in the Kepler 442 system. The neutral zone between their territories had become the perfect place for a final showdown. Whoever won here would control half the galaxy. Whoever lost would face total destruction. Vextar had fought in 100 battles, but he had never seen an enemy fleet this large. The Alliance had brought everything they had. Massive dreadnoughts that looked like metal mountains floated next to smaller but deadly destroyers. Fighter craft swarmed around the capital ships like angry insects. The sight should have worried him, but instead he felt excited. Today would prove once and for all that the Zephyrian Empire was the strongest force in the galaxy. Thanelock felt the same confidence as he studied his enemy through the bridge windows of his command ship. The Zephyrians thought they're self-healing. Ships made them invincible. They would learn today that quantum phase weapons could destroy anything, even ships that repaired themselves. The Alliance had spent years preparing for this moment. Every weapon had been tested. Every strategy had been planned down to the smallest detail. The two fleets faced each other across 1,000,000 miles of empty space. Between them floated the wreckage of smaller battles fought over the past months. Broken ships and debris fields marked the places where brave warriors had already died in this endless war. Today would add much more wreckage to the collection. At exactly dawn on New Terra, standard time, both commanders gave the order to attack. The battle began with a light show that could be seen from planets dozens of light years away. Plasma cannons that burned hotter than stellar cores fired streams of destruction across the void. The Zephyrian bioships released clouds of living metal that sought out enemy vessels like hunting animals. The Korthak quantum weapons tore holes in space itself, creating whirlpools of twisted reality. For 6 hours, the two fleets hammered each other without mercy. Ships died on both sides, their crews vaporized in seconds as weapons designed to kill gods found their targets. The Zephyrian regeneration technology kept many vessels fighting even after taking damage that should have destroyed them. The Korthak phase shift drives allowed their ships to avoid attacks by stepping partially out of normal space. But both sides had saved their most powerful weapons for the final moments of the battle. As the fleets closed to point-blank range, Admiral Vextar activated the Empire's newest creation, a reality bomb that could unmake the atomic structure of anything within a light-minute radius. At the same moment, Commander Thanelock triggered the Alliance's ultimate weapon, a quantum cascade generator that could collapse the space-time continuum in a localized area. The two superweapons fired at exactly the same instant. For a brief moment, space around the battlefield blazed with energy that had never existed before in the natural universe. The fabric of reality rippled like water as forces that should not exist in the same dimension met and merged. Then everything went silent. The sudden quiet was more shocking than the loudest explosion. 1 second, 4,000 ships had been locked in the most violent battle the galaxy had ever seen. The next second, every weapon stopped firing. Every engine shut down. Every light went dark. Admiral Vextar stared in horror as his bridge displays went black one by one. The hum of the ship's massive power cores faded to nothing. Emergency lighting failed to activate. Even the artificial gravity began to weaken as the generators that maintained it lost power. On the Alliance flagship, Commander Thanelock experienced the same nightmare. His quantum phase drives, which had never failed in decades of operation, simply stopped working. The ship's computer systems crashed without warning. Life support systems that had been designed to work for centuries without maintenance began shutting down. Across both fleets, the same scene played out on every vessel. Ships that had been marvels of advanced technology became nothing more than drifting metal boxes. Weapons that could destroy planets were now useless decorations. Engines that could push massive vessels faster than light could not even generate enough power to move them a single inch. The two commanders tried desperately to contact their other ships, but communication systems had failed along with everything else. They could see the rest of their fleets through their bridge windows, but the vessels might as well have been on the other side of the galaxy. Without their quantum-entangled communication networks, each ship was completely alone. Hours passed in the dark silence. Emergency power systems that should have activated automatically remained dead. Backup generators that had been tested countless times refused to start. Even the most basic electrical circuits had somehow been burned out by whatever force had swept through the battlefield. Both fleets began to drift apart as the last traces of momentum from their engines carried them in different directions. Ships that had been locked in deadly combat now floated helplessly past each other like ancient derelicts. The greatest military forces in galactic history had been reduced to expensive tombs drifting through space. As the reality of their situation became clear, panic began to spread through both fleets. Life support systems were failing. Food synthesis plants had shut down. Water recycling equipment no longer worked. The ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were now death, traps for their crews. Admiral Vextar stood in the darkness of his bridge, watching his crew try uselessly to restart their systems. Nothing worked. The most advanced technology in the galaxy had become worthless junk in the space of a few seconds. He had led his people to victory in dozens of battles, but now he could not even keep the lights on. Commander Thanelock faced the same hopeless situation. His engineers reported that every system on the ship had suffered complete failure. Not damage that could be repaired, but total shutdown, as if the technology had simply forgotten how to work. The quantum principles that powered their civilization seemed to have stopped functioning entirely. Both commanders realized with growing horror that they had created their own destruction. Their superweapons had somehow interfered with each other in ways their scientists had never predicted. The resulting energy surge had not just damaged their ships, but had fundamentally altered the nature of space around the battlefield. The war that had raged for 3 years had ended not with victory for either side, but with the complete defeat of both. 4,000 ships carrying millions of the galaxy's finest warriors now drifted silent and powerless in the darkness between stars. The two greatest military forces in known space had destroyed themselves in their quest to destroy each other. In the cold silence of space, both fleets began the slow process of dying. Their crews had perhaps days or weeks before life support failed completely. No rescue was coming because no one else in the galaxy possessed the technology to reach them quickly enough. The neutral zone where they had chosen to fight their final battle had become their tomb. The galaxy's strongest armies had fallen silent, leaving only the empty void and the slow approach of death. Captain Jake Morrison was having his morning coffee when the emergency signal reached Earth. He sat in his captain's chair aboard the UES Liberty, watching the stars slowly wheel past the bridge windows. The patrol mission had been routine so far, just another week of checking shipping lanes and making sure space pirates stayed away from Earth's trade routes. The Liberty was not the biggest ship in Earth's small fleet, but Jake was proud of her anyway. She measured 800 feet from nose to tail and carried a crew of 200. Her nuclear fusion engines could push her up to half the speed of light, and her railguns could punch holes through most armor. By galactic standards, she was primitive and slow. By human standards, she was the best they had. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park looked up from her communications station with surprise on her face. "Captain, we're getting a priority message from Earth Command. It's marked urgent." Jake set down his coffee cup and turned to face her. "Put it through, Lisa." The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Carter back on Earth. The old man looked worried, which was unusual. Jake had known Carter for 15 years, and the Admiral rarely showed concern about anything. "Jake, we need you to change course immediately," Carter said without his usual pleasantries. "We've received reports of a massive fleet engagement in the Kepler 442 system. Both the Zephyrian Empire and the Korthak Alliance have gone completely silent." Commander Alex Turner, the ship's science officer, looked up from his station. "Sir, did you say both fleets? That's impossible. They've been fighting for 3 years." "That's what makes this so strange," Carter continued. "Our long-range sensors picked up the energy signatures of the biggest space battle in recorded history. Then everything just stopped. No communications, no energy readings, nothing. It's like both fleets simply vanished." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Zephyrian Empire and Korthak Alliance were the two most powerful civilizations in known space. If something had happened to both of them, the entire galactic balance of power would shift overnight. "What are our orders, sir?" Jake asked. "Proceed to Kepler 442 and investigate. Provide humanitarian aid if possible, but do not take any aggressive action unless directly threatened. Earth's official position is neutrality, but we can't ignore a disaster of this magnitude." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in stunned silence. First Officer Ryan Brooks was the first to speak. "Captain, if both those fleets are really gone, we might be walking into the biggest graveyard in galactic history." Jake nodded, grimly. "Alex, how long to reach Kepler 442 at maximum speed?" Turner checked his calculations quickly. 18 hours, sir. But, Captain, our sensors aren't designed for this kind of investigation. We won't know what we're dealing with until we drop out of faster-than-light travel. Lisa, send a message back to Earth Command acknowledging our orders. Then contact the crew and tell them we're changing course for an emergency mission." As the Liberty altered course toward the Kepler 442 system, Jake found himself thinking about Earth's place in the galaxy. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most alien civilizations still thought of Earth as a backwater world full of primitive beings who barely understood their own technology. The truth was more complicated. Human technology was simpler than what the major powers used, but it was also more reliable. While other species built machines that could bend space and time, humans stuck to fusion power and kinetic weapons because they worked. While aliens created computers that thought faster than living minds, humans built systems they could understand and repair. Dr. Rachel Kim, the ship's chief medical officer, joined Jake on the bridge as they approached their destination. "Captain, I've been reading about Zephyrian and Korthak biology. If their life support systems have failed, we might not have much time to help any survivors." "How long do they have?" Jake asked. "Zephyrians can survive about a week without their environmental suits. Korthak physiology is different, but they're not much better. Maybe 10 days at most." Chief Engineer Bob Martinez came up from the engine room to add his own concerns. "Sir, I've been thinking about this situation. If something could disable the most advanced fleets in the galaxy, what makes us think our equipment will keep working?" It was a good question, and Jake did not have a good answer. The Liberty relied on technology that was centuries behind what the Zephyrians and Korthak used. Their fusion reactors were based on principles humans had understood since the 21st century. Their computers used simple electronic circuits instead of quantum processors. Their weapons fired metal slugs instead of exotic energy beams. "Maybe our primitive technology is actually an advantage," Lisa suggested. "If some kind of advanced weapon caused this, it might not affect our simpler systems." Turner ran diagnostics on all the ship's systems as they approached their destination. "Everything's running normally, Captain. Fusion reactors at full power, computers responding correctly, weapons systems online. Whatever hit those fleets, it doesn't seem to be affecting us." The moment of truth came when the Liberty dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they saw on their screens made the entire bridge crew fall silent with shock. Thousands of ships floated motionless in space, arranged in the battle formations they had held when everything went wrong. The vessels were enormous, some measuring dozens of miles in length. They should have been blazing with lights and energy signatures. Instead, they drifted dark and silent like monuments to a forgotten war. "Mother of God," Brooks whispered. "There must be 4,000 ships out there." Jake stared at the incredible sight. Each of those ships represented centuries of advanced engineering and carried crews of thousands. The combined military might displayed before them was enough to conquer entire star systems. Yet now they floated helpless in the void, their advanced technology somehow rendered useless. "Lisa, try to contact them. Broadcast on all frequencies that Earth offers assistance to any ship in distress." Park worked her communications equipment for several minutes before shaking her head. "No response, sir. I'm not even getting automated distress signals. It's like every ship out there is completely dead." "Take us in slowly," Jake ordered. "Keep our weapons powered, but don't target anything unless I give the order. We're here to help, not to fight." As the Liberty moved deeper into the battlefield, they could see the damage both fleets had taken before whatever disaster struck them. Many ships showed blast marks and hull breaches from weapons that could melt titanium like butter. But the strangest thing was how suddenly everything had stopped. Weapons were still aimed at targets they would never hit. Fighter craft hung frozen in attack formations they would never complete. Turner studied his sensor readings with growing amazement. "Captain, I'm detecting massive amounts of exotic radiation throughout this area. The quantum signatures are completely off the charts. It's like space itself has been damaged somehow." "Can you determine what caused it?" "Not yet, sir. But whatever happened here, it involved forces beyond anything in our physics textbooks. The energy readings suggest both fleets fired some kind of superweapon at the same time. Jake made a decision that would change human history. Open a channel and broadcast this message. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force, Vessel Liberty. We are here to provide humanitarian assistance to any ship in need. Earth's technology appears unaffected by whatever caused your systems to fail. We offer our help freely and without condition. For long minutes, there was no response. Then, faintly, a voice came through the static on the communications channel. It spoke in the harsh, clicking language of the Korthak Alliance, but the ship's computer quickly translated it into English. Earth vessel, this is Supreme Commander Thanelock of the Alliance Fleet. Our ships have suffered complete system failure. Life support is failing on most vessels. We request immediate assistance. A few minutes later, another voice joined the channel. This one spoke in the musical tones of the Zephyrian Empire. Human ship, this is Admiral Vextar of the Imperial Navy. We also request aid. Our technology has failed completely, but our crews still live. Jake found himself in a position no human had ever occupied before. The two most powerful military commanders in the galaxy were asking Earth for help. The species that most aliens considered primitive and backwards had suddenly become the only hope for millions of stranded warriors. Understood, both commanders. We will do everything we can to assist your crews. Prepare to receive our shuttles. As the Liberty launched its small fleet of rescue craft toward the disabled alien vessels, Jake realized that everything had changed. Earth was no longer a minor player in galactic affairs. Whether they wanted it or not, humans had just become the most important species in known space. Commander Alex Turner had never seen readings like these before. He stood over his science station aboard the Liberty, studying data that seemed to break every law of physics he knew. The exotic radiation flowing through the Kepler 442 system created patterns that made no sense according to human understanding of the universe. Captain, I think I'm starting to understand what happened here, Turner called out to Jake Morrison, who was coordinating rescue operations from his command chair. But you're not going to believe it. Jake walked over to the science station, leaving Ryan Brooks to manage the shuttle operations. Over the past 6 hours, the Liberty's small fleet of rescue craft had been ferrying medical supplies and emergency equipment to the disabled alien vessels. So far, they had made contact with dozens of ships from both fleets. What have you found, Alex? Turner pointed to a complex diagram on his screen. Both civilizations were using quantum-entangled technology, but on a scale we never imagined. The Zephyrian bioships don't just heal themselves through normal regeneration. They use quantum field manipulation to restructure matter at the subatomic level. And the Korthak ships, even more advanced. Their phase shift drives actually move their vessels into parallel dimensions. They exist in multiple realities at the same time, which is why their weapons can hit targets that seem to be in different locations. Jake studied the data, trying to understand the implications. His engineering background helped, but the science Turner was describing went far beyond anything humans had attempted. So what went wrong? They were using the same quantum field, Turner explained. Both technologies tap into what our physicists call the zero-point energy matrix. It's like a river of power that flows through all of space. Under normal circumstances, there's enough energy for everyone to use without interference. Turner highlighted different sections of his data as he continued. But when both fleets fired their ultimate weapons at the same time, they created a massive drain on the quantum field. The Zephyrian reality bomb tried to unmake matter by severing its connection to the zero-point matrix. The Korthak cascade generator attempted to collapse local space-time by overloading the same field, so they canceled each other out. Worse than that, they created a feedback loop that burned out the quantum field for several light years in every direction. Any technology that depends on quantum entanglement or dimensional manipulation simply stopped working. The more advanced the system, the more completely it was disabled. Jake felt a chill as he realized what Turner was saying. And our technology? Completely unaffected. Our fusion reactors work by smashing hydrogen atoms together using magnetic fields and heat. Our computers use simple electronic circuits that don't require quantum processing. Our weapons fire chunks of metal using electromagnetic acceleration. None of it depends on the exotic physics that both alien civilizations built their technology around. The irony was almost too much to believe. For decades, Earth had been dismissed by galactic powers as a primitive civilization that barely understood the basics of advanced technology. Human ships were considered slow and clumsy. Human weapons were thought to be crude and inefficient. Human computers were laughed at for their simplicity. Now that same primitive technology was the only thing working in a region of space where the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had rendered themselves helpless. Dr. Rachel Kim joined them at the science station, carrying a data pad full of medical reports from her trips to the alien vessels. "Captain, I've been treating patients on both sides, and I'm learning some disturbing things about how dependent they've become on their technology." "What do you mean?" "The Zephyrians have biomechanical implants that regulate their body functions. Without power, some of them are going into organ failure. The Korthak have quantum-enhanced nervous systems that let them process information faster than natural biology allows. When their implants shut down, many of them fell into comas." Turner nodded grimly. "It's the same story throughout both fleets. They've integrated their technology so completely into their biology that they can't survive without it. We're looking at a humanitarian disaster on a scale the galaxy has never seen." Jake returned to his command chair and opened a channel to both fleet commanders. Over the past few hours, he had established regular communication with Admiral Vextar and Supreme Commander Thanelock. Both alien leaders were struggling to keep their crews alive as life support systems continued to fail throughout their fleets. "Admiral, Commander, this is Captain Morrison. My science officer has completed his analysis of your situation. The news is both good and bad." Vextar's translated voice came through the speakers first. "Tell us the bad news, human." "The quantum field that powers your technology has been severely damaged. Our scientists estimate it will take decades for the natural field to regenerate enough to restart your systems. Your ships are essentially dead until then." There was a long silence before Thanelock responded. "And the good news? Earth's technology is completely unaffected. Our ships can operate normally in this region of space. More importantly, our engineers think they can modify our systems to provide life support for your vessels." Chief Engineer Bob Martinez had joined the conversation from the engine room. "Captain, I've been studying the technical specifications both fleets provided. Their life support systems are incredibly sophisticated, but they all depend on quantum processors to function. We can bypass those processors and run their environmental systems using our own computer networks." "How long would that take?" Jake asked. "For a ship this size, maybe 6 hours. But, sir, we're talking about 4,000 vessels. Even if we work around the clock, it would take years to retrofit them all." The magnitude of the problem was staggering. Both fleets had millions of crew members whose lives depended on technology that no longer worked. Earth's small ship could help a few dozen vessels at most. The rest would slowly die as their life support systems failed one by one, but Turner had been thinking about the problem from a different angle. "Captain, what if we don't try to fix their ships? What if we evacuate their crews instead?" "Where? Would we put millions of refugees?" "Not on our ships," Turner clarified, "but there are habitable planets in nearby systems. If we can transport their crews to worlds with breathable atmospheres, they could survive while we work on a long-term solution." Lisa Park looked up from her communication station with excitement. "Sir, I've been monitoring transmissions from across the galaxy. Word of what happened here is spreading fast. Other civilizations are offering to help with evacuation efforts." Jake felt a spark of hope. Earth might not be able to solve this crisis alone, but they could coordinate a galaxy-wide rescue operation. Human ships might be primitive, but they were the only vessels that could safely operate in the quantum dead zone around Kepler 442. Admiral Vextar's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Captain Morrison, I must ask you something. Why are you helping us? The Zephyrian Empire has never shown friendship to Earth. We have dismissed your people as backwards and primitive." Commander Thanelock added his own question. "The Alliance has also ignored Earth in our diplomatic dealings. Your species has no obligation to risk your lives for ours. Why do you offer aid freely?" Jake thought for a moment before answering. The truth was simple, even if the aliens might not understand it. Because it's the right thing to do. Humans believe that all intelligent life has value, regardless of which star system it comes from. When people are in trouble, we help if we can. There was another long silence before Vextar spoke again. "Your species is strange, human, but perhaps there is wisdom in your strangeness." Over the following days, the Liberty became the command center for the largest rescue operation in galactic history. Ships from dozens of civilizations arrived to help evacuate the disabled fleets, but every vessel had to be guided through the quantum dead zone by human pilots. Since Earth's ships were the only ones that could navigate safely through the damaged space, Jake found himself coordinating between species that had never worked together before. Ancient enemies put aside their differences to help save lives. Civilizations that had been neutral in the war offered their resources freely. The disaster that had ended the Galactic War was also creating new bonds of cooperation across the stars. As he watched human shuttles ferry alien refugees to safety, Jake realized that Earth's role in the galaxy had changed forever. They were no longer the primitive backwater that more advanced species could ignore. Through a twist of cosmic irony, humanity's simple technology had made them indispensable. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the dangers of depending too heavily on advanced technology. Sometimes the simplest solution was also the most reliable. Sometimes being primitive was actually an advantage. And sometimes the species everyone dismissed as backwards turned out to be the one that saved everyone else. 3 weeks after the disaster at Kepler 442, Captain Jake Morrison found himself in a position no human had ever held before. He sat at the head of a conference table aboard the Liberty, with Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire on his right, and Supreme Commander Thanelock of the Korthak Alliance on his left. The two most powerful military leaders in the galaxy were asking Earth to mediate their peace talks. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Both alien commanders had arrived on the Liberty as bitter enemies who had spent 3 years trying to destroy each other. Now they worked together daily, coordinating the massive evacuation effort that was saving millions of lives from their disabled fleets. Commander Ryan Brooks served as Earth's primary diplomatic liaison, a role he had never trained for but was handling with surprising skill. "Gentlemen, we need to discuss the long-term situation. Our rescue operations are proceeding well, but we can't evacuate 4,000 ships overnight." Vexitar nodded his massive head. The Zephyrian admiral stood 8 feet tall and had skin that shifted color based on his emotions. Right now, the blue-green patterns indicated deep concern. "Commander Brooks speaks truth. My people grow restless on the refugee worlds. They are warriors, not farmers. They need purpose." Thanelock made a sound that the translation software rendered as agreement. The Korthak leader was smaller than his counterpart, but no less imposing, with metallic implants covering half his face. "The Alliance crews feel the same frustration. We came here to fight a war, not to be rescued like helpless children." Jake had been expecting this conversation. As the evacuation progressed, it became clear that simply saving lives was not enough. Both civilizations were facing the complete collapse of their military and economic systems. Without their quantum-based technology, they could not maintain their vast interstellar empires. Dr. Rachel Kim entered the conference room carrying a datapad full of medical reports. Over the past weeks, she had become the galaxy's leading expert on treating quantum technology withdrawal. "Captain, I have updates on the biological effects of the technology failure." "Go ahead, Doctor." "The news is mixed. Patients who were completely dependent on quantum implants are stabilizing, but they're facing permanent changes. Zephyrians who lose their biomechanical enhancements age much faster. Korthak with damaged neural implants can no longer process information at superhuman speeds." Vextar's skin patterns shifted to angry red. "You are telling us that our people will never be the same? I'm telling you that your people will be more like they were before they became dependent on advanced technology. In many cases, that might actually be healthier in the long run." Commander Alex Turner joined the discussion from his science station. "Dr. Kim is right about the biological effects, but there's something else we need to consider. The quantum field damage isn't permanent. Our latest calculations suggest it might regenerate within 50 to 70 years. 50 years. Thanelock's mechanical voice synthesizer crackled with disbelief. "Our civilizations cannot survive that long without our technology." Jake had been thinking about this problem for days. Earth's position in the current crisis was unique and powerful, but it also came with tremendous responsibility. The decisions made in the next few weeks would shape galactic politics for generations. "What if they didn't have to?" Jake asked, quietly. All eyes turned to him. Brooks raised an eyebrow in the way he did when his captain was about to suggest something crazy. "Explain your meaning, human," Vextar demanded. "Both of your civilizations became dependent on technology that was ultimately fragile. You built your entire societies around quantum physics that could be disrupted by the right kind of interference. Maybe this disaster is an opportunity to build something better." Turner caught on to Jake's thinking first. "You're suggesting they rebuild using more stable technology." "Exactly. Earth's technology isn't as advanced as what you had, but it's also much more reliable. We could help both civilizations redesign their infrastructure using fusion power, electronic computers, and conventional manufacturing." Thanelock leaned forward in his chair. "You would share your technology with us?" "More than that. We would work together to create hybrid systems that combine the best of all our approaches. Earth gets access to your scientific knowledge. You get technology that won't fail when the universe decides to play tricks on quantum fields." The idea was ambitious beyond anything humans had ever attempted. But as Jake outlined his vision, even the alien commanders began to see the possibilities. Instead of competing to build the most advanced technology possible, the three civilizations could cooperate to build the most reliable technology possible. Chief Engineer Bob Martinez joined the conversation via video link from the engine room. "Captain, I've been working with engineering teams from both fleets. Their understanding of physics is incredible, but they've forgotten how to build simple machines that work. We could teach them our manufacturing techniques while they teach us their theoretical knowledge." Over the following days, the conference room aboard the Liberty became the birthplace of a new kind of galactic civilization. Representatives from dozens of other species arrived to participate in the discussions. Everyone wanted to be part of the solution to the biggest crisis in recorded history. Lisa Park coordinated communications between the growing alliance of worlds. "Sir, we're getting requests for membership from civilizations that were neutral in the war. They want to join whatever organization we're creating here." The scope of the project kept expanding. What had started as a rescue mission was becoming a complete restructuring of galactic society. Earth found itself at the center of the largest diplomatic initiative in history. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Some factions within both the Empire and Alliance wanted to rebuild their old technology and resume the war once the quantum fields regenerated. They saw cooperation with Earth as a sign of weakness. Admiral Vextar faced a challenge to his leadership from hardline elements who believed the Empire should never accept help from primitive humans. "Captain Morrison, there are those among my people who call me a traitor for working with you. They say I have dishonored our warrior traditions." Thanalock nodded grimly. "The Alliance faces similar internal strife. Some of our commanders believe we should seize Earth's technology by force rather than accept it as a gift." Jake had been expecting this kind of resistance. "What do you think we should do about it?" "Give them a demonstration," Vextar suggested. "Show them that cooperation produces better results than conquest." The demonstration came sooner than anyone expected. A radical faction of Korthak extremists attempted to capture one of Earth's rescue ships using primitive weapons cobbled together from salvaged materials. They believed that humans were too weak to resist a determined attack. They were wrong. The Liberty's response was swift and precise. Jake ordered a minimal force engagement that disabled the attackers without killing anyone. Earth's railguns punched through improvised armor like it was paper. Their fusion-powered shields absorbed energy weapons that should have been devastating. But the real message came after the battle. Instead of taking prisoners or demanding punishment, Jake offered medical aid to the wounded attackers and invited their leader to join the peace talks. "Your people fought bravely," Jake told the captured Korthak commander. "But bravery without wisdom leads to needless death. We're offering your civilization a chance to become stronger than it ever was before. The question is whether you're smart enough to take it." The incident had an unexpected effect on both fleets. Seeing Earth's military capabilities firsthand made many skeptics reconsider their opposition to cooperation. If humans could defeat Korthak warriors using primitive technology, perhaps that technology wasn't as primitive as it seemed. More importantly, Jake's merciful treatment of the attackers demonstrated something that impressed both alien cultures: strength without cruelty. Both the Empire and Alliance respected power, but they had rarely seen power exercised with restraint and compassion. As negotiations continued, a new vision began to emerge. Instead of rebuilding the old empires with their dependence on fragile technology, the three civilizations would create something entirely new: a galactic confederation based on reliable technology, mutual cooperation, and respect for all intelligent life. The Galactic Defense Alliance was born in the conference room of a human battleship, negotiated by species that had been enemies just weeks before. It would be an organization dedicated to protecting peace rather than waging war, to building up rather than tearing down. Jake looked around the table at the assembled representatives and felt a mixture of pride and responsibility. Earth had gained more political influence in a month than most civilizations achieved in centuries. But with that influence came the obligation to use it wisely. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could fully predict. The only certainty was that humans would be at the center of whatever came next. 2 years had passed since the disaster at Kepler 442, and Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UES Defiance, watching the most remarkable sight in galactic history unfold before him. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different civilizations worked together in perfect coordination, their crews united by a common purpose that would have been impossible before the war ended. The Defiance was Earth's newest battleship, but like all human vessels, it would still be considered primitive by the old standards. Her fusion engines were based on technology humans had been using for decades. Her railguns fired simple metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Her computers relied on electronic circuits that any engineer could understand and repair. But the ship also carried innovations that would have been impossible without alien cooperation. Zephyrian biotechnology provided self-repairing hull plating that could seal breaches automatically. Korthak engineering had contributed improved shield generators that could deflect energy weapons more efficiently. Dozens of other species had added their own improvements to create something entirely new. Commander Lisa Park, now serving as the Defiance's first officer, monitored communications from across the fleet. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from all sections of the construction project. The new orbital shipyards are ahead of schedule." Jake nodded with satisfaction. The shipyards orbiting the former battlefield at Kepler 442 represented the greatest engineering achievement in recorded history. Instead of hiding from the quantum dead zone that had ended the war, the Galactic Defense Alliance had decided to build their headquarters there. The region that had once been a graveyard was becoming the birthplace of a new civilization. Dr. Rachel Kim joined them on the bridge, carrying her usual collection of medical reports and scientific data. She had become one of the most important people in the galaxy, her research into quantum technology integration saving millions of lives. "Admiral, I have the latest statistics on the rehabilitation programs. How are our former enemies adapting? Better than anyone expected. Zephyrian warriors who lost their biomechanical enhancements are discovering they enjoy working with their hands again. Korthak scientists who can no longer process information at superhuman speeds are learning to appreciate the slower pace of careful research. It had taken time for both civilizations to adjust to life without their advanced technology. Many had initially seen the loss as a disaster that reduced them to primitive savages. But as months passed, something unexpected happened. People who had been completely dependent on machines began rediscovering abilities they had forgotten they possessed. Commander Alex Turner looked up from his science station with excitement. "Admiral, the latest sensor readings from the quantum field are very encouraging. Regeneration is proceeding faster than our original estimates suggested." "How much faster?" "We might see partial restoration within 30 years instead of 50. And thanks to the research we've been doing with Alliance and Empire scientists, we'll know how to prevent another cascade failure." The news was welcome, but Jake knew it raised important questions about the future. When the quantum fields finally regenerated enough to support advanced technology again, would the old empires try to rebuild their war machines? Would the cooperation they had built together survive the return of the power that had once made them enemies? Chief Engineer Bob Martinez answered those concerns from the engine room via video link. Admiral, I've been working with the Joint Engineering Council on the new safety protocols. Any civilization that wants to use quantum-enhanced technology will have to follow strict guidelines to prevent interference patterns. And they're willing to accept those restrictions? More than willing. Nobody wants to risk another Cascade failure. The Zephyrians and Korthak have seen what happens when advanced technology fails. They're actually pushing for even stricter safety measures than we originally proposed. The transformation in both former enemies had been remarkable to witness. Species that had spent centuries trying to build the most devastating weapons possible were now competing to create the most reliable and safe technology. The disaster that ended their war had taught them that true strength came from systems that could not fail when they were needed most. Admiral Vextar's voice came through the communication system, speaking from his own ship in the Joint Fleet. The Zephyrian commander had become one of Jake's closest allies, despite their species having been strangers just 2 years ago. Admiral Morrison, the evacuation of the final disabled vessels is complete. All crews have been successfully relocated to their new homes. Supreme Commander Thanelock added his own report from the Alliance flagship. The last of our old quantum-dependent weapons have been safely dismantled. Our new hybrid defense systems are operating at full efficiency. Jake felt a surge of pride at how far they had all come. The fleets that had once faced each other in mortal combat now worked together as a unified force, dedicated to protecting peace throughout the galaxy. Ships that had been designed to destroy planets were being converted into research vessels and humanitarian aid transports. But the greatest achievement was not technological or military. It was the simple fact that former enemies had learned to trust each other. Zephyrian warriors served alongside Korthak engineers on mixed crews. Human diplomats mediated disputes between species that had been fighting for centuries. Children from dozens of worlds grew up together on the new colony planets, learning that cooperation was more powerful than conflict. The Galactic Defense Alliance had grown from 3 founding civilizations to over 200 member species. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had never communicated before. Scientific knowledge was shared openly instead of being hoarded as military secrets. Cultural exchanges brought new art, music, and literature to civilizations that had been isolated for millennia. Ryan Brooks, now serving as Earth's chief diplomatic officer, brought news of the latest expansion. Admiral, we've received formal membership applications from the hegemony of Tau Ceti and the Crystal Collective. That brings our total membership to 207 civilizations. Any opposition from existing members? None. In fact, the Zephyrian Empire and Korthak Alliance both voted to sponsor the new applications. They said that any species willing to embrace cooperative principles should be welcomed. Jake marveled at how completely the situation had changed. 2 years ago, both alien civilizations had dismissed Earth as irrelevant. Now they were actively promoting human diplomatic initiatives and serving as advocates for the principles humans had introduced. The UES Liberty, the ship that had started it all, remained stationed at Kepler 442 as a monument and museum. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the humble vessel that had somehow ended the greatest war in recorded history. School children learned about the day when primitive human technology had saved the most advanced civilizations in known space. But Jake knew the real lesson was simpler than most visitors realized. Humans had not succeeded because their technology was superior or because they were naturally better than other species. They had succeeded because they were willing to help others without expecting anything in return. As he watched the joint, fleet conduct training exercises in perfect coordination, Jake reflected on Earth's journey from galactic backwater to the center of interstellar civilization. It had happened not through conquest or technological advancement, but through the simple act of showing up when everyone else had fallen silent. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was not the most advanced weapon or the most sophisticated technology. Sometimes it was the willingness to extend a helping hand to those in need, even when they had previously dismissed you as unworthy of their attention. Earth's battleships now patrolled trade routes throughout known space, their fusion engines, and kinetic weapons standing ready not for conquest, but for protection. Human crews worked alongside alien officers who had once been their enemies. The species that had been ignored by galactic powers for centuries had become the guardians of galactic peace. Jake opened a communication channel to address the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Today marks the 2nd anniversary of the battle that changed everything. We gather not to celebrate victory over our enemies, but to honor the moment when enemies became allies." Hundreds of voices responded from ships representing dozens of species, all speaking in perfect unison, despite their different languages and customs, for peace, for cooperation, for the future we build together. The ceremony was brief, as Jake preferred. There were no grand speeches or elaborate celebrations. Instead, the joint fleet simply resumed its patrol duties, protecting the trade routes and colony worlds that depended on their vigilance.